Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Payments Leader Show. I'm your host today, Adrian Evans, and absolutely delighted to have Justin Hanna on the show today. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Now, as you know, as the audience, we're always seeking to explore key areas in the payments ecosystem that can add most value. And one of the key areas that we've seen that affects funding, that affects risk, that affects transactional costs, is having an effective go-to-market strategy. So I'm absolutely delighted today to welcome Justin on the show because he's somebody that we've connected and known each other for a while now. Particularly, we found each other on LinkedIn, and I admire the way you look to add value to customers, the way you prospect, and actually the way you build trusted relationships and look to build a relationship before trying to look at transactions. So really looking forward to deep diving in on that today. So I wonder, I know how busy your schedule is, so thank you. So I wonder if we could start with you just sharing a bit about your background and yeah, just bringing that to life for us.
Absolutely. So I've been in payments now for 15 and a half years. Starting my role in operations onboarding team
Yeah,
within the Barclaycard acquiring arm. Then moving on to more of a customer facing role, a white label product of the Adyen Gateway,
yeah,
which was really interesting for me to get an understanding of payments from a non-consumer perspective. I think when we sit down, we make our payments, we don't think of all the different
mm,
businesses involved when that transaction is sent between different providers. It comes back and says, yes, thanks for your transaction, or no, it's been declined. So it's definitely an eye opener for me. Then moving from Barclaycard, moving to WellPay, the dark side, I think some people may have called it, when you move from one big supplier to another, work in the relationship management team before really getting an understanding of new business. So for me, working with some of the world's largest businesses
yeah,
made it a bit of an easier transition than selling
yeah,
new business into the large global businesses. Predominantly for me was focused on the airline and travel sector. Had a great few years at WellPay. And for me, it's as a large acquirer at the time I joined, it felt like a scale up business.
right, okay,
Um, which was an incredible experience for me working under some fantastic leaders that really had a huge part of the rest of my career.
right,
Uh, After spending 4 or 5 years doing that within WellPay, I moved over to a gateway based in the UK, taking that business from a very, very small startup business to a scale up business now, which is doing extremely well. And then most recently moving to one of the new acquirers on the market as a head
yeah,
of enterprise sales here at Nomi Pay.
great.
This isn't a sales pitch, but watch this space on Nomi Pay and what we're hoping to achieve over the next few years. Very, very exciting.
Wonderful, wonderful. We always have passionate payments people on this show and who love the industry for what it can represent and what it can, the difference it can make in people's lives. You're one of the most passionate payments people I know. Where does that passion for the industry come from?
I think my passion stems from constant changes in an industry that needs consistency.
Yeah,
I know it sounds counterintuitive, but customers and regulation is what's driving the changes.
yes,
And I love the fact I can be the face of payments to businesses, but I can be the face of businesses to the payments world and to the
okay,
rest of the ecosystem. And I'm seeing the growth of contactless to Apple Pay to crypto payments and now open banking. And
yeah,
I think there'll be even more changes over the next 5 years that we've not even thought about yet. And for
right,
me, that's what makes me passionate about what I do.
okay. So just to explore that a second, you're saying that the key drivers there are both regulation and customers. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think regulation is something that the customers never need to think about. Um, but the customer journey is something that everyone else in the ecosystem needs to think about. So I think technology businesses are driving the
Mm,
acquiring infrastructure.
yeah,
And if we look at, especially in the past, payments has always been stemmed from a banking relationship and has now been pushed and pushed by technology business. I say this quite
mm,
often is we've gone from fintech is great, but actually the future of payments is tech fin businesses.
okay,
So it's the likes of Stripe, it's the likes of Adyen that have incredible tech platforms that are becoming financial institutions.
Right.
What this has then led to is financial institutions businesses having to buy, build, or partner with tech businesses to ensure that when they're going out to sell their products, they're at parity with the rest of the market.
Yeah. So what's that difference then with something being a fintech led rather than, or now being a tech fin led? What's the big difference from your perspective, or
Yeah,
the nuance
I
there?
I think for me, and it's how different individuals look at it. But I
Mm,
think businesses that are building for the future, they are tech first businesses. And we talk about product led growth as an industry all the time versus sales led growth.
yeah.
And I think payments has been an industry where it has been sales led for a very long time.
Yes. Yeah.
The most successful payment businesses are the ones that are building the tech first for the future.
Right.
And then they're not chasing behind themselves trying to find what's next.
Right. Okay. Brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah, and there's some notable examples there that you've given of organizations that seem to be way ahead of the curve, but not way in the head of the curve just in the sake of we're just throwing a product over the wall. Actually, we know from customer demand and we can anticipate that effectively.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think payments is such a saturated market. However, it's also extremely fragmented.
Mm,
So you very rarely have one provider that can give you everything
indeed.
in every country, in every region. And
Yeah.
it's what I always find interesting when I speak to businesses and potential prospects is when I start talking about a product in a specific market, whereby one of our competitors may be working with another one of our competitors, and nobody has full autonomy of that market just yet.
Yes. Yes.
And there are some huge players, and I always call it frenemies, but
Yeah.
actually, payment businesses partner with payment businesses every single day.
Mm,
And I think that's what makes it such an interesting industry compared to maybe some other sectors where
yes.
everybody is a competitor and
Yeah.
very rarely would they work and they don't want to give each other's secrets away. Whereas in payments, with such a collaborative sector and such a
Mm,
collaborative industry, that people
yeah.
want to work with each other and everyone knows actually the strengths and the weaknesses of everybody's products and is
Yes.
open to talk about it. And for me, I love the fact that people I'm speaking to that may work for competitors have good things to say about the business I work for. And although people say it's dog eat dog world,
Mm,
actually, there's more credibility comes from understanding the strengths of your competitors
yes.
rather than talking about their weaknesses.
Mm. Yeah, that's fascinating because I think there's two observations from me that first of all, in the payments industry, whoever you are, you can't do a lot on your own. Yeah, whether it's the
Absolutely.
four-party model or the future that we're looking towards as well. I do think that brings a different mentality. So as you said, I think it was best described by to me when somebody said to me, actually today we could be competitors, tomorrow we could be partners, and then the following day I could be a vendor to you. And actually,
Absolutely.
I think it drives, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. I think it drives a far more collaborative, whether it's deliberate or not, a far more collaborative mindset and also actually a more educated mindset in the sense, as you just said, I need to know what your product could do because I might be fitting it in with my product to provide a solution for a customer.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to credibility again. If I was to go and speak to a customer who's working with one of our competitors,
Mm,
I want to be able to explain to that customer that one, I know their sector, but also I have an understanding of the products they're already working with today, and not just trying to vomit our product over
yeah,
somebody,
indeed.
right? Tell them I know the strengths of the product they're working on today and our competitor, the weaknesses, but also who their current provider works with. It shows, I think, from a buyer's perspective,
Yeah,
this person really understands what the business I work for today has tried to achieve for me. And you look at some of the big businesses in the market, you can win on price, you can win on service, you can't win on product. And other businesses, you may win on product, but you may end up winning only because of price. You
yeah.
may win only because of service. And merchants are not as fickle, I don't think, as what they were in the past, where the cheapest price is always the best.
Mm,
And there's an old saying is you pay cheap, you pay twice, right?
yeah, yeah,
And you make a really good point there where I've worked with providers in the past that we have gone against each other, and the next day we're actually signing a partnership agreement with each other, and then all of a sudden we're buying products from each other.
yeah,
And I think it
yeah.
just goes back to that point where payments companies have got so much to go after in this huge industry. You can't just focus on one or two products. If we rewind 20 years ago, you were a gateway or an acquirer.
Yeah.
And that was all. And you had FX brokers on their right, in their own right, so come as part of the acquiring. Now you have FX, fraud, gateway, acquiring, lots of different products, APMs, all falling into the strengths and weaknesses of different businesses. And every single business, when you build a payments business, you need to understand the challenge that you're solving for the business that you want to sell to.
Yes.
And you just cannot be a jack of all trades.
No.
And that's why I think the industry's got to a point where if you have a market where you want to be successful in, you have to try and sound out the rest of the world and concentrate where you know your product's strong.
Absolutely. So I wonder if we could dive just, there's so much I do want to talk about today, from leadership to, but the go-to-market piece, I wonder if we could go there with, can you explain to us why you believe that having an effective go-to-market strategy is absolutely effective, it is absolutely imperative, whether you're a scale-up, whether you are a merchant, or actually whether you're a well-established player? Why is an effective go-to-market strategy so vital to the success of the business?
I think for me, the B2B buyer experience has undergone such significant transformation over the last 5 to 6 years, COVID having a huge part of that.
Yep.
The rise of digital channels and the amount of information that's readily available to the buyer is making them more empowered than ever before. Sure. They're conducting their own research, and they're comparing multiple vendors and kind of demanding that personalized experience. So it's very rare now where you wake up in the morning and go, I want to buy from that business because I know their products. So for me, go-to-market is becoming more of a brand play, but more of a personal brand play and credibility play. So I was reading a report recently by Sixth Sense that mentions that consumers and buyers are doing 80% of their research and their decision-making before speaking to a salesperson. So when we talk about go-to-market, your go-to-market strategy is actually so crucial before you ever speak to your prospect. And that's really hard for many businesses to comprehend, is that you're having to do a lot of your work before anyone actually speaks to you, which then means that personal branding becomes more important. Influencers, and I always use Stephen Bartlett as an example here. People go on Dragon's Den to get Stephen Bartlett to sell their product, not just for Stephen Bartlett to invest in them. So building strong personal brands that resonates with your target audience is just as important than having a couple of products that are similar to your competitors. This allows kind of them to influence the buying decisions and create trust with potential customers. And I think that has such an impact on go-to-market strategy, and it's kind of vital for success, right? Whether that's because we have increased competition. So we know it's highly competitive in payments. We can hold our hands up. There's numerous players vying for market share. Alongside that, it's a complex sales cycle. It's not an easy decision just to change a payment provider. There's a lot involved in that. The sales cycle is not 2 or 3 weeks; it's months and months in enterprise. It could be years. And how can that go-to-market strategy streamline the sales process so that your buyer already whittles down the potential customers as part of that, the potential providers as part of that tender process, instead of going out to 10 providers? For me, a go-to-market strategy is they already know who you are. They know who you are and they have an understanding of what your business does. That, for me, is successful go-to-market. What's difficult is measuring that. It's not as very easy to be able to measure marketing success when it comes to go-to-market. It's no longer dependent on how many inbound leads you get. That's not me saying SEO does not matter. It absolutely matters. But actually, what's going on from a merchant's perspective without coming onto your website? Where else are they seeing your brand? LinkedIn, maybe Facebook, maybe TikTok. These brands where I think people look and go, I'm not going to start selling on that platform. The people that will succeed are people that are already selling on that platform.
So how does that contrast to what we've sort of said before in our, we have had a number of conversations before we started recording today about the typical approach of being very opportunistic and very sales led only. Well, what's the danger there with only being sales led? Because many people think go to market is just, it just seems like another thing that's the latest thing to do rather than having a strong business foundation.
Yeah, I think again it comes back to the buyer experience. So if we
Mm,
look at some of the reports before COVID, right, 3% of people at any time were ready to buy. They're in buying mode. Okay, we are now at post COVID with the reports that say where 0.5% of people are willing to buy.
yeah,
Right, so not only is that a lot less people looking to buy, especially in the payments industry, we have more payments businesses than ever before. We have more salespeople than ever before, and we're working in a saturated market alongside the buyer knowing more than they've ever known before. So when we talk about go to market, if you want to go and send out 1,000 cold emails to 1,000 prospects, you'll be very, very happy you get 3 or 4 people open them emails.
yeah,
Now, what we can sit here and say today is that if you are connected with 1,000 people on LinkedIn and you are posting content regularly of the challenges in their world, you then send an email to these 1,000 people, I can guarantee you more people will open that email.
yeah,
Why?
yeah, definitely.
Because they know the individual it's coming from, not the business it's coming from. An example use case of that is if I look at the business that I've joined with the team that's come over, people will look at, oh, yeah, I know you guys, you're on LinkedIn and you work for ABC and you talk about XYZ.
Yeah, yeah,
Now, if I didn't do that and I sent them a cold pitch email, as we do as individuals, we delete it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So go to market for me is becoming a brand that people are aware of by the individuals that work for the business. And that does not, I'm not saying that the product doesn't need to work. It absolutely does need to work. But it's how we getting our customers to know our products before trying to sell to them.
Yeah. So this is about having an effective product that solves problems and solutionizes, of course, but it almost feels to me like you're earning the right by building a relationship or trusted relationship before you can say, by the way, can we talk to you about our product?
Look, outbound spam strategies is where probably the staple of B2B marketing
Yeah,
over the years. They're just no longer effective. Buyers are increasingly ignoring unsolicited emails and calls. Why? Because they don't want to speak to people, right? And is it a generation thing? Maybe we are learning from Generation Z. We can say, although they are youngsters, actually they're teaching us things that we didn't think we needed. Um, these tactics, I think, are actually damaging the brand's reputation when you're just
mm,
bombarding people that are not in buying mode, as opposed to doing it good. I think it is harming it. Demand creation should be the focus of go-to-market roadmaps. It
okay.
involves creating content, building thought leadership, engaging with buyers through targeted marketing campaigns, knowing then that the people you're reaching out to, it's in my opinion, should already have heard of your business before.
Right, okay. So I wonder if we could just before I'm dying to dive into like some of the key steps here, but there's one word that's really struck out to me so far is trust. So what does trust mean to you, and how do you go about building that with prospects and people that you ultimately would like to have a partnership and a business with, do business with?
It's really, really interesting question. How do you build trust with someone that doesn't know who you are?
Mm.
Right. And if I had the answer, I'd probably have my own island, Adrian.
Okay,
But
okay.
what I would say with that is if we take our sales hat off, we take our business hat off, and we put ourselves in a consumer driver's seat.
Yeah.
How have I built trust in brands where I've not bought from before?
Yes.
And it's a couple of different things. One is personalities that are wearing that brand. It's the influencers that have put in their trust in that brand.
Yeah.
And this is how what becomes an influencer generation, right? Like I mentioned, the Stephen Bartlett piece, when people are going on to Dragon's Den,
Mm.
Stephen Bartlett might earn less than the other dragons, but the individuals want Stephen Bartlett because he is the face of the brand.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And for me, that is what's hugely important on building trust, because individuals are putting their trust in him.
Mm.
So when I look at NomuPay, our business, when we go to market, do I think people are going to wake up in the morning and want to buy from NomuPay? Or would I think that people want to wake up in the morning and buy from someone that they know has credibility? And that's how trust is formed. It's knowing that someone has an understanding of your challenges,
Yeah.
has an understanding of your world,
Yeah.
and understanding and experience of what's fixed them challenges in the past.
Yes.
That's what I think is trust in B2B sales.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. And sorry for me, I think the fundamentals there, as you say, it's about a brand that I always think as well, just it's a bit about the sort of personal elements. If you look at the people in the world you have the strongest relationships with, there's usually three components, aren't there? You trust them, you respect them, and you like them. Yep.
Yes,
And I think
absolutely.
if you look at any relationship and you measure those three things, each one of those out of 10, just, you'll see the score very, very quickly. And if your buyers are
Yeah,
doing
that's a
that
really
to
good
you
point.
subconsciously. So yeah.
It's a really good point. Yeah, trust someone, you like someone, you respect someone, you buy from them. And look, there's always a cliche of people buy from people, and you hear it every single day. It's absolutely true. But, and it's a very big but, you won't buy from somebody if they're a nice person and don't have the right product.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's when it comes. That's then when it comes to trust, because you're trusting that person when they've told you about their product is telling the truth about that product. And I've seen it time over time. Salespeople facing a deal and telling customers what they think their customer wants to hear.
Yes. Yes.
6 months down the sales cycle, they come to a product conversation, and shock horror, the business doesn't have that product, or the roadmap's been pushed back by 6 to 9 months. And that then goes back to go-to-market strategy again. Who, especially in the payments world, who is involved in go-to-market strategy? It's the executive leadership team, it's the sales team, it's a marketing team, it's a product development team, it's a customer success team, it's a finance team, it's the demand generation team. It's not just somebody on LinkedIn going, "Hi, I love payments, I know your challenges," right? It's everybody in the industry, and especially in that business, is understanding the vision. So is the value proposition or pitch from someone in products similar to what someone says to customer success, similar to finance? So when they're out with dinner with their friends, they're all able to talk about the vision of the business in the same way. That obviously then leads into culture. But for me, it's all about trust, like you mentioned. And that's not just trust externally; it's trust internally within a business as well.
Yeah. Now this is fascinating, and I think that internal trust is vital as well, because trust in between departments that you are going to deliver. The number of products I've seen when the user experience on onboarding, selling is one thing, onboarding, and then the actual user experience, whether it's business to business or UX or consumer, is absolutely vital. I wonder if we could just dig in a little bit further and perhaps look at some of the core steps. What are the core steps that you take, the almost how to go about building an effective go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, I think it's, and I would always say I work in sales, right? So you'd like to think maybe that the way that I might build it might be different to what another person in the business may think about building it. But it's when you get them heads together that become really, really interesting. So this is when I talk about, I cannot sit here and say, I know how to build a successful marketing team, right? What I need to do is trust that our marketing team understands their role in go-to-market. And then also speaking to the customer success team and their role in go-to-market. So are we upselling the right products? From a finance team perspective, do we have the right relationship with our vendors of what you'd wish to have with all your vendors, and treating everybody in the right way? So for me, if you're building out a successful go-to-market strategy, it has to have leaders from all in the business on the same wavelength, on the same page, on the vision of where the business is going to. That is number one priority. And then we have to kind of reverse engineer it. Who are we trying to sell to? Who are the individuals and the personas in that business we're trying to sell to? Do we understand their sector? What's the ecosystem? So it's not very transactional. So here's a business, here's payments. There's so many other factors in that that customer needs to think about before a customer is a paying customer. An example of that is we look at shopping carts in retail, right? You have CRMs in most sectors.
Yeah.
Do you, as a business, understand everything that business needs before it gets to you as a payments business? That for me is go to market. Are you speaking? Are you speaking to other players in the ecosystem that don't need your product? And that's then forcing businesses to take their blinkers off.
Yeah.
And for me, in sales, a successful salesperson is not just speaking to the business they're trying to sell to. They're trying to sell to. They're trying to speak to other influencers within that ecosystem.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing there is, before we think about a go-to-market, we need an internal alignment before we even start having any conversations or any dialogue. Then move into other, and also then the other aspect of actually deeply understanding your customer. Can we just go one step back there, though? Is again, versus this opportunistic piece, is I've observed that some of the strongest payments businesses and some of the strongest payments disruptors are really clear on whom they want to do business with, and equally important, whom they don't want to do business with. Yeah. Now that wonderful word FOMO comes here as well. And we advise, obviously, at Payments Leaders Advisory, we advise a lot of organizations. And we always find, I was only talking to some of our senior advisors the other day, and almost getting people to stop doing business with people who are not our ideal customer or our ideal customer profile is really difficult, because people are saying, oh yeah, but we'll just do this one, but like, yeah, they're not in the sector we want to be focused on. So I'd love to know your thoughts on ideal customer profile, and also sticking to your niche, and also, I suppose, saying no to your non-niche.
The power of saying no is extremely hard to come by in sales,
Right.
if we're absolutely honest. But actually, it does allow you to focus on what your product is good for. An example of this actually is we sat down as a business just yesterday to have a discussion on our sectors going into 2025. And we had a list. We had a list of 20 sectors, of which we actually thought about a few weeks ago if that's what we could go for. We then brought in, and that was as a sales team, we then brought in our solutions sales engineers. We brought in our marketing team to actually, how are we going to go to market? What are we going to really put our time and effort into? And the power of saying no has allowed us to put more time into the industries where we want to be successful in. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's a no forever. We look at crypto payments, right, is a prime example of this in the payments industry, where providers said we're not going to crypto because the regulation and the reputational damage that could bring us. Move forward to today's world, and actually crypto is becoming bigger and bigger every single day. So the businesses that were saying no at the time, in my opinion, especially the big fintech businesses and payments businesses, were saying no because they weren't ready.
Right. Okay.
Right, because they didn't feel the product was ready. What they then do is build that in the background so that when they do go to market, they have everything. And I always say this as a sales leader, and you should actually think back from a business perspective, is are you arming your business, sales team, and the rest of the business to go to the market with all the tools they need to succeed? So when we go through our different sectors and the markets that we want to sell into, you have to be 110% confident that you have all the tools to go out and succeed. If you don't, you should not be trying to sell into that industry.
Okay. So this is fascinating. You've really unlocked sort of Pandora's box here, I think. So this piece then, I completely agree that being in a situation where you can give your sales teams all the tools they actually need to sell to that particular. But can we go back to this piece also about saying no? What do you practically do? Because it takes a brave person to say no. We're in hyper growth industry. Yeah, we've got hungry investors, we've got hungry founders, and to say to somebody, because the number of businesses I know is like that look and say, we want every penny, we want every dollar, we don't care where it comes from. Yet I sense the opportunity cost of chasing everything is actually inefficient. And the truth is, whomever we are, a very, very large player, we can't chase everything, whomever you are. So how do you, well, I suppose the big one is, how do you manage upwards and also your team to say no?
Yeah, I think that comes to trust. I think what I've found hardest in my career is having a conversation with extremely successful businessmen and entrepreneurs and businesswomen, and saying that they need to trust me on this one, and because they're the ones that have succeeded in what they've attempted to do,
Sure,
right?
sure, sure.
They've got to the top. Credibility is huge, trust is huge. So as we're trying to get customers to buy from us, we're also having the same conversations internally with our internal stakeholders, and trust is a huge part of that. It's actually talking through your mindset and your thoughts with your leadership team, saying, here's why we're concentrating on these 5 sectors, because we've looked at the market. This is our target addressable market. And I talk about TAMs quite a lot, is how successful can we be in this market, the product that we have today, compared to how can we be successful in this market,
TAMS, sorry,
what a
can you tell
product
me
we
what
have to.
TAMS means? What does
Yeah,
TAMS mean?
the target addressable market.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So if you're looking at a certain sector, how successful can you be in that market, the product that you have
Mm-hmm.
today? An example of that, you've been working in retail or selling to retail space for a long time, and then you realise there's a lot of revenue to be made in airlines.
Yeah.
You might not have a product for airlines, so it's having that conversation with your leadership team and saying, here's where we have right now.
Mm,
You then work with them to an expo level. If we want to sell into other sectors, here's what we need to succeed there.
brilliant, brilliant. Now, it's fascinating because we were doing some work, or I've seen a number of examples where people have had traditional markets and then we found the white space. Yep.
Yes.
And again, you hit the jackpot when you find white space with few competitors, etc. But of course, now the big thing is, how do we transition the mindset, usually in the culture of the business, who is always sold like this, and people's bonuses are dependent on this, and then trying to transition them over here and say, this is the future. You've got a product gap, but the biggest gap for me is here. Is saying,
Mm.
actually, this is now the future, because we've always sold it. Why are we changing? And there's always that chasm in the middle. We can see the future. Not saying everybody's bought into it, but we can see the future. We definitely know the past. That transition is difficult. How do you try and build trust with leaders then to say, we've looked at the target addressable markets, we need to take the following steps, and we're not going to get results instantly?
Yeah, it's regular feedback loops.
Okay.
It's extremely important. Um, there's nothing wrong with the vision of a business changing.
Yeah.
There is nothing wrong with the vision of the business changing. What you have to do is ensure that the vision remains internally aligned.
Mm.
Okay, so if you're saying we've been predominantly going after SMEs, next year we're going over to enterprise, everything changes. The whole buyer
Yeah.
experience changes,
Yeah, yeah,
onboarding
absolutely.
piece changes. You need to be able to explain in a way that allows people to feel comfort in you as a leader. This is why we are making these changes. And also, what I would say, that doesn't mean that people want to be a part of it. Okay, and it's a very harsh reality sometimes when businesses
Mm.
change from one
Yeah,
business
yeah.
to another, that it's not going to work for everybody in the business. And there's nothing wrong with that. Some people might just like working at startups. Some
Yeah, yeah.
people might love working at
Yeah, we've
enterprise
seen it.
businesses.
Yeah.
It changes, right? And I've worked at enterprise businesses. I've gone as employee number 12 at some businesses. I've now joined a scale-up business as 300 people. It changes all the time. Some people like certain businesses, some people don't. There's nothing wrong with that. What our roles is as leaders is to ensure that we are providing that constant comfort to the rest of the businesses. These are decisions we're making, and here's why we are making them decisions.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily mean that, like I mentioned, people are going to enjoy the answers, but
Yeah,
it's always a journey that you go on together as a business. And at certain
yeah.
points of that journey, some people get off the bus and some people get on the bus,
Sure.
and we drive to a different location. So,
Yeah, yeah.
so for me, trust and culture is what's going to help a business more than just having a product.
So how do you? I couldn't agree more about that. And we see that constantly. And it's I'm just about to write a blog post about this, about the vital importance that leaders have to lead. and step into the void and take people on that journey. You mentioned the word there, communication and culture. Yep. How do you communicate? How do you over communicate? Because I see there's almost a perennial problem within the industry is too many leaders under communicate. And then what happens in that void is, noise gets filled in that void. And we lack the most beautiful thing that in business can have is clarity. When we have clarity, people can do their jobs per day and they know what they're focused on. So fascinated to hear what your take is on that.
Yeah, I think for me, look, communication is so vital. I've seen businesses where CEOs don't talk to anybody in the business. I've seen businesses where CEOs are too involved in the business. I think management is such a huge part of building a business, and that may mean middle management, right? Maybe top down, the bottom up. But I always bring it back to feedback. You need to have an open relationship with everybody in your business so they can tell you how they feel. I couldn't think of anything worse than managing someone that went home each night and wasn't happy but felt like they couldn't tell me.
Right, okay.
That is for me, but I'm maybe a different lead to somebody else. I am quite empathetic. I really want to make sure that I am doing the best as an individual to allow someone that I'm working with to absolutely succeed. And the biggest thing I would always say is that employees do not work anymore for businesses. They do not work for business anymore. They work for the people they want to work for. And it comes back to this whole piece on a new generation that has been born over the last 5 to 10 years. If people are not happy anymore, they will leave their jobs.
Yes.
Without much consideration. Some would rather not have a job than be in a job where they're unhappy. The loyalty to businesses has changed so much over the last 20 years. And actually, I think we can take a lot of the younger generation whereby if it doesn't work, don't do it. So how can you as leaders ensure that you are providing an environment to allow your employees to succeed? And it's really, really difficult. And that actually starts when you're advertising for a job role. That's when it starts. It doesn't start when someone's 2 years into the role. It doesn't start when they come in for their induction. People are just looking to see, can I be at a business flexibility when it comes to work-life balance, maternity cover? These are things that people think about now before starting a job.
Yeah.
And then once you understand the culture, more and more people are reaching out to ex-employees. What was it like working there? And actually, this then comes back to me and my personal experience, the power of what LinkedIn's been able to do. Because I've had people message me and our colleagues over the last year saying, hey, I've seen you've moved roles. One, was it like at your old place? Or two, I've never heard of you guys, but I love what you guys do. You seem really authentic. Can I have a chat about roles? Now, that is the power of trying to build what I think is a culture based on credibility and trust.
Yes.
That people have that respect for you. But again, like I mentioned, it goes on to when that person first starts. For me, I want to make sure that I have an understanding of everybody in my team. And it sounds really easy, but not enough people do it. Not enough people do it.
Yeah. I think I'm always looking, just so you're aware, I'm always looking for the sort of headline quote. Yep. And I think I've got it, which is that people don't join businesses, they join leaders. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think it's fascinating for me. There's so much that you've said there that resonates with us. Obviously, we're very people focused on within the payments industry, and one of our big roles is to facilitate cultural change within organizations and that transition process. And it's fascinating for me how people think trusted relationships with employees, with partners, etc., is a nice to have. It's, for me, I love this term, which is that as trust goes down, transactional costs go up. My message to all leaders in the payments industry is, if you don't build trusted relationships, certainly within your business and within the ecosystem, you are costing your business and yourself money. You are costing.
Absolutely.
And I don't just mean the opportunity costs of not seeing opportunities, etc. The example you gave there about personal brands these days, when somebody reaches out to you and says, hey, what was your previous company like to work for? And it's social proof. Yep. And it's very powerful, and I think it's one of the real enlighteners of democracy with the internet brings, is that you could reach out to anybody anywhere in the world and say, hey, what's it like to work for X? Well, actually, what's it like to work for them as a leader? You know,
Absolutely.
I occasionally, very, very rarely, I do it for very selective leaders. We actively do talent acquisition. It's very, very selected. And we only work with servant-based leaders, yeah. And it was the easiest hire ever, because everybody wanted to work for this leader, because they were trusted, they were liked, and they were respected. So much came from there. If we could just going back, we could talk about culture all day, I think, and the elements there. Just going back to the go-to-market piece, looking at the prospects, who is it vital that you engage with? We talk about influencers, and we haven't talked yet about economic buyers, etc. But who is it vital that you engage with when you're prospecting and building relationships with? Because, as you've alluded to, it's not just singular anymore.
Yeah, look, especially in the payments world, you need to understand how the product works financially, how the product works technically, how the product works from a relationship management perspective, and also the impact it has for that business to their end, the buyer.
Yeah.
So I always say the same thing when I speak to new businesses. Is my job is to give you the best product, so your tech team are happy. Trying to be the cheapest price, so your finance team are happy. And if we look at some of the big players in the world, Stripe have been extremely successful. Why? Because their product's great. That's simple, right? If you go and speak to all the different finance businesses and say what are your thoughts on the price, some people may not be as happy, but actually they have every right to charge that if the product is doing exactly what it said it was going to do. And sometimes great products come at a great price, and it's life. So when we talk about go to market in that approach, is ensuring that you know your price points. So when you speak to your potential buyers, there's no disparity there. And price, you always want it to be the last conversation. I think it's 12 different touch points. When it comes to buyers, I might say payments might be that times 10. Because you're doing so many different individuals. Something I've always found quite interesting in the past, in my personal opinion, is asking the sellers of the business you're trying to sell to how they sell their product.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Okay.
Interesting.
So, and it's something I always push the team to do is watch the value proposition of the business you're trying to sell to.
Right.
Right. So, how are they trying to sell? I think it's really, really interesting. Actually, what it allows you to do is build a relationship with the sellers. Salespeople love to talk, right? Hold my hands up. We love to talk. So actually, when you've got someone who wants to reach out to you to have a conversation, you then start building that relationship, you build that trust, and then all of a sudden, you've got an internal advocate of your brand.
Brilliant. Okay.
And then you start getting so introductions, you start going to events. I think it's holding off on that sales pitch.
Yes.
And that's so important, is that actually before you even speak to the decision maker or maybe even influencer, you're already aware of the challenges that other departments in that business. Yeah. But it's very underused. And the reason it's underused, I think sometimes, is because salespeople are just trying to hit a number.
Of course.
Right. And it's where enterprise sales and strategy behind enterprise sales becomes absolutely key. And it really is understanding your business that you're trying to sell to.
Brilliant. So what I'm hearing there is, before we almost go anywhere near an economic buyer, it's like understanding how they sell, their customers,
absolutely,
and then understanding the key influences and the key decision making around their business before we actually engage at that level.
Absolutely. I've spoken to salespeople that are trying to sell products to my business internally. And I have so much respect, and we've been more open with someone that's reached out to me.
Yes.
To have a conversation about how I do my job. Now, they don't have a product for me as an individual, but they really care about how my business is trying to make money.
Yeah.
And that's the key, right? Understanding how the business is making money, what's the economic units behind that. That way, when they build that trust and relationship with me, you just start opening up, right? there's nothing more that people love talking about is their own business, right? So if when you start creating that warmth, atmosphere and culture, people start to open up. They're like, actually, it was quite painful with A, B, C, or X, Y, Z. And then what that seller should be doing is just taking notes on all this. So when they have the next conversation, they have an understand the challenges that the business already has.
Yeah, I do love that saying. Actually, one of my clients always says she's probably the most curious person I know. Yeah. And actually, I think the best salespeople at all levels, by the way, whether it's an SDR, whether it's or an EVP of sales, actually being curious and being genuinely curious can get you a long way in life, and in sales. If you're genuinely curious. Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. So I wonder if you could just share any user cases of both effective go-to-market strategy and non-effective go-to-market strategy with us. That would be, we all love a good user case. Yeah.
Yeah, look, if I look at demand creation when it comes to personal brands, an example would be myself and my colleague, who's the head of partnerships, moving our thoughts on outbound sales, trying to spam as many businesses as we can at the same time, more around trying to create demand on us as individuals.
Yeah.
So when posting on LinkedIn and being a little bit more vulnerable and honest on our LinkedIn posts, we knew that we understood the pains and the challenges of our ICP. We knew that, but how do you get that across to them without trying to throw product down their throats? We spend a lot more time now talking about the challenges and the issues that they have on a social platform that we know they're looking at every single day. So instead of me trying to send out a cold email, when they go on LinkedIn on the way into work or when they're at home, they're seeing us and we're talking about their industry. That for me builds credibility and it builds trust.
Yes.
This 100% means that the sales conversation is going to have to take longer because we're not opening the door as quickly. What that does then mean is that when the prospect is ready to talk, they already have an understanding of who we are, what we do, and then the time to actually close that deal is quicker because sometimes they've approached us. Now, interestingly, we'd had more leads through our LinkedIn inbounds than we had through our website when it comes to value of leads. Right? Wow. For me, that is the easiest use case to be able to say to people. Now, I had someone that I've been trying to speak to for over 2 years, one individual for 2 years, sending cold emails and cold LinkedIn messages. And then I stopped. But then what I was doing was talking about their world. Then I get an inbound lead message into my inbox saying, "Hey, Justin, apologies for ignoring you. We're just about to embark on a new project and I'd love to have a conversation because it's about open banking, for example." That is pure success. The downside of this is you cannot you cannot measure the impact of demand generation as easy as what you can measure the success of inbound leads on a marketing website. And that then comes to building trust internally to your team. Say, we have to look at the numbers of over 2 years as opposed to over 6 months. I just think big brands are not winning like they used to, but individuals are winning more than ever before.
So I'm hearing there as well as an employee, your personal brand is becoming more and more important before we even look at transacting from a business to business perspective to even talk about the product, and trying to get in the mind and focused on what customers' challenges are, what their struggles are, and trying to solve for those actually is the start of building relationships and the start of building dialogue.
Absolutely. I want nothing more than my prospects, when they think about payments, I want them to think of me. Now, that is not selfish, not against my business, because if I succeed, the business succeeds. Okay. I don't think someone's going to wake up tomorrow and go, "I need payments. I need to go and speak to this payments company." I want them to wake up and go, "That guy knows the pain that I have.
Yes.
And he knows what he's talking about. Let me reach out and have a conversation."
Brilliant, brilliant. The other fascinating thing was there, as you're saying, actually, almost at the front end there, it actually takes longer. Yep.
Yes.
because the dialogue takes longer and the reach outs to start with, etc., takes longer. But actually, the transacting itself is shorter because we
100%.
have that wonderful, I love that term, trust is efficient. Yeah. When
Yeah.
there's a fascinating, fascinating, I would say they estimate that the payments industry in the world is worth something like 125 trillion, which is a big number. Yeah. But 6 to 7% of that is spent on professional services. Yeah, that's also a very big number. Yeah, and most of that is because people don't trust each other. Most people are basically going, okay, we want to do business together, but I need to get my lawyers talking to your lawyers too. And the only thing is, there's just professional services just going further and further up there in terms of how that is working. So that's fascinating. And I really do think the theme for me, that the word that stands out in everything we've talked about is trust today.
Absolutely. It's quite interesting on the professional services piece that I've been involved in too many legal conversations that I bear to one when it comes to contracts that have taken months and months. And then one thing I've never been involved in is having to go to court, which is great. So it makes you think 6-7% on the professional services, fingers crossed, on these professional services for businesses because of fear of failure.
Yeah.
Right. And people just don't want to, and I can't afford to get it wrong. And that probably leads back to when it comes to individual creators, right? When you're creating demand, the reason people don't post on LinkedIn is the fear of failure, the fear that people are going to judge them. When actually, less than 1 or 2% of people, the ones that post on LinkedIn regularly, are the ones that are probably going to be get more leads when people get into buying mode. So what I would love is for more people to post their thoughts and challenges and opinions on LinkedIn. But is that counterintuitive? Because right now I might be in that 1 or 2% that are doing it. But you can only learn, right? We need to carry on learning as much as possible.
Well, just say for me that the big thing that I find, what you produce great content. It's very readable, it's very valuable, etc. But I think the big thing you did do first though was you show up as you. Yeah.
Yes.
And I just to say from you, it's like your personal brand it's all joined up. So whether you're on a podcast, whether you're writing a blog, whether you're writing a comment, or whether, and I think I'd love to ask you, where's that authenticity come from? The fact that you do show up as you. There isn't the different sides to Justin like that. There's just Justin as in the nicest possible way. How have you taken those leaps?
If I'm honest, I'll put all that on our demand generation manager,
Okay.
who would kind of whip me if I weren't being myself.
Brilliant.
Because authenticity is extremely expensive if you don't have it.
Okay.
But actually, there's nothing more powerful than being yourself. There is nothing more powerful than being that. And it goes down again to that personal experience. Who would I want to buy from? Someone being themselves. And that doesn't mean buying from people or anything like that. Is I want people to know me as someone that's humble, that's opinionated and honest. And I'm out there to try and be the best person I can to allow my team to be the best people they can.
Okay.
The same person I am now is the same person that's going to go home tonight and have dinner with my family and twin sons.
Yeah.
Right? I'm always going to be that same person. Yes, that's great for me, and I know I can go to bed each night knowing that I put everything into my day and I've been myself. It doesn't mean by not being yourself that's not going to work, but I know that as I move on in my career, I can look back and go, I can't have done anymore.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, I love that. I love that. So that's saying that there's a cost to not being yourself, and I think that's probably for another podcast one day about how much of you shows up or is allowed to show up at work when you're engaging with prospects and with customers. Justin, look, there's so many questions we've discussed. I wonder if I could just bring this together and just sort of summarize what I've heard and what I thought would be valuable for the audience. Would that be okay?
Absolutely.
I think the first thing for me is your passion for the industry obviously comes across strongly, and the difference it can make for many people's lives. I think what was really good as well, just to start with, was that clear difference between an opportunistic approach to prospects compared to an effective go-to-market. I think then realizing what's our total addressable market And the real fascinating one for me about having the bravery and, well, frankly, the data as well, to say, actually, we are going to go after these markets, but we're not going to go after these other markets. These are the reasons why. And something you said that was interesting as well, which was, it might not be a no forever. It might not be, it might be a no because actually at the moment that's an overly regulated marketplace and we're not ready. But actually giving that clarity is actually really important on that. I think the theme that's come across though is trust on every level. So trust on the level of building relationships and dialogue with customers, prospects, and deeply understanding and being curious with them. Also then trust across the business. So get the trust right internally before we're going to try and think about go to market, because if that bit isn't joined up, when we actually speak to customers and prospects, they're going to see the gaps within that. But trust with employees, it's really interesting what you said about that employees don't join companies, they join leaders, and also they stay with leaders. And we see this often. I'm a bit of a career geek, and I see this often where people will follow the same leader as they move within their career, because the relationship and the psychological safety is trusted with them. And then I thought it was fascinating what you said about personal, moving on from those, was personal brands. Just again, how important it is. What's your personal brand? Because people, prospects are likely to buy from you engaging with them. And that's probably likely to be far more effective than what it is just a marketing or demand generation campaign. And I think that piece then that you said particularly, which is that just approaching the marketplace and understanding deeply your customer's needs is absolutely vital. But then being authentic and showing up as you. So first of all, I suppose you need to know who you are before you can then show up. And then there's a level of vulnerability I'm feeling as well to that. But look to share, look to create dialogue, look to create conversation. So they were the key things for me. And I suppose the final one for me, obviously, was before trying to speak to an economic buyer, you almost need to build this castle of influence around them.
Yes.
And that starts with curiosity. And it starts with turning the sales hat off and actually turning the relationship hat on, because people buy from people they trust, they like, and they respect.
Absolutely.
Is there anything you'd add to that, or?
No, I think it's completely correct. It's interesting that you can go as many sales courses as you want, but that respect, like, and trust piece is very difficult to train.
Okay. So is that character based then?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it is. And that's not saying people can't change, by the way. I think it's just kind of that deepness within individuals.
Okay. Justin, I just want to thank you for coming on the show. There were so many strands, and I think we need to get you back on to answer a whole lot of questions, because I'd love to talk to you more about culture, leadership, and those sort of pieces, and what you've just said as well about how trainable is some of this in this world. So thank you very much. I really appreciate all of your insights, and I wish you a great rest of the day. And thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Bye-bye.